3 days before the World Cup final, something unusual happened. Cristiano Ronaldo was seen at a private airport in Lisbon. It was early in the morning, and the sky was still a little dark. He walked quickly toward a small private jet, wearing a black hoodie and dark sunglasses. No fans were around, no press. No one expected to see him there. Some airport workers noticed him, but they were told not to say anything. It was clear that this trip was a secret. People began to wonder, why was Cristiano traveling in the middle of the World Cup, especially when his team wasn't in the final? The flight plan said the jet was going to Paris, but there were no public events planned there. It didn't make sense. Ronaldo's personal assistant and bodyguard were with him, but they said nothing to anyone. They boarded the plane quickly, and within minutes it was in the air. Even though Ronaldo often traveled, this felt different. It wasn't for an ad, a meeting, or a holiday. He looked serious, focused, as if something important was about to happen. On social media, fans started to notice he hadn't posted anything for almost a day. For someone as active as Cristiano, that was rare. Rumors began to spread. Was he meeting a coach? Was he planning a surprise comeback? Or maybe, was he going to see someone important? After 2 hours, the jet landed quietly in Paris. No photographers were waiting, no reporters. Only a black car stood at the far end of the runway. The driver opened the door and Cristiano stepped inside without saying a word. The car drove off through the quiet Paris streets. He didn't go to a hotel or a big office. Instead, the car stopped in front of a small hidden cafe near Montmartre. It was an old building with warm lights and wooden doors. A sign on the front said, "Closed for private event." Ronaldo stepped out and looked around. The street was calm. A few people passed by, but no one seemed to notice him. He walked inside the cafe. The owner greeted him and led him to a quiet corner table near a window. There were only 2 chairs, one for him and one more waiting. Ronaldo sat down and looked out the window. He didn't take out his phone. He just sat there, thinking. He seemed deep in thought. It wasn't a normal meeting. He wasn't here for business. Something personal was happening, something that would soon surprise the whole world. And the second chair, it wouldn't stay empty for long. The cafe was quiet, with only the soft sound of coffee machines in the background. Cristiano Ronaldo sat at the corner table waiting. The lights inside were dim but warm, giving the place a calm, private feeling. The smell of fresh pastries and coffee filled the air. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful for someone like him, who was used to the hustle and bustle of the football world. The tables were arranged neatly, but the cafe wasn't the type of place where big stars usually came. It wasn't flashy or crowded. It felt almost like a secret hideaway. Cristiano looked around the room again, his eyes scanning every corner. He was careful not to stand out, but deep down, he knew no one would expect him to be here. He sat still for a while, tapping his fingers gently on the table. His thoughts seemed far away. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, and the minutes stretched on. Cristiano had no phone in his hand, no laptop in front of him. He was just waiting. Then, after a few more minutes, the door of the cafe opened quietly. Cristiano didn't look up immediately. He knew who it was before he saw him. The footsteps, the way the door opened, it was him. Lionel Messi walked into the room, dressed casually in a cap and a simple jacket. No bodyguards, no media, no attention. Messi was as low-key as ever, blending into the background of the small cafe. He looked around quickly, spotting Cristiano in the corner. They made eye contact for a moment, and Messi gave a small, knowing smile. Then, with a few steps, Messi walked over to the table and sat down across from Cristiano. They both sat there for a second, not speaking, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. There was something unspoken between them, a kind of understanding that only they shared. Two of the best footballers in history, sitting together in a quiet cafe, far away from the spotlight. No cameras, no crowds, just the two of them. Messi finally spoke, breaking the silence. "Did you expect this?" he asked with a slight grin, referring to the secret meeting. Cristiano chuckled softly. "No," he said, "but it's the right place." They both looked around, as if checking that no one else had noticed. There was something about this moment, this quiet, private moment, that felt different from anything they had ever experienced in the public eye. They weren't rivals here. They weren't part of the never-ending competition. They were two men, taking a break from the world they both knew so well. And yet, despite the calm atmosphere, there was an underlying sense that this meeting wasn't just about catching up. It was about something more. Cristiano shifted in his chair, as if preparing himself for what was to come next. Messi looked at him, and for a brief second, they both understood that this conversation would change things in a way no one could have predicted. The room was still quiet as Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi sat across from each other. The soft hum of the cafe's machines and the distant murmur of the city outside were the only sounds in the air. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. It was as if they were both taking in the surreal nature of this meeting. Two giants of football, known for their fierce rivalry, now sitting together in this small, almost forgotten cafe. It wasn't the usual scene. Cristiano, used to the flashing cameras and loud cheers, had never experienced anything like this. Messi, on the other hand, had always been more reserved, but even he seemed to be in a different state of mind today. There was no pressure here, no expectations. Just two men who had spent most of their lives battling it out on the field, but now, here, they were just two people who understood each other in a way no one else could. Finally, Messi broke the silence, his voice calm but with a hint of curiosity. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, glancing around the cafe. It was as if he was surprised to find Cristiano in such a place, away from the world they both knew so well. Cristiano smiled softly, looking up from his coffee cup. "Neither did I," he replied. "But it feels right. Quiet. Away from everything. Just us." Messi nodded slowly, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, I get it. The world doesn't stop for us, does it? No matter how many trophies we win, there's always more to prove." Cristiano leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "It's not about the trophies anymore," he said. "It's about the journey, about the sacrifices, all the years of training, the games, the wins, the losses. We don't really talk about that part, do we?" Messi looked at him, surprised by the honesty in Cristiano's words. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "No, we don't. It's always about the next goal, the next match. It's easy to forget what it really takes to get here." The two men sat in silence for a while, the weight of their shared experiences hanging in the air. Both of them had been through so much. They had seen highs and lows that no one else could truly understand. And yet, here they were, talking as if the years of rivalry had never existed. The world had always seen them as competitors, but in this moment, they were simply two players who had given everything to the game. Messi took a deep breath, looking across the table at Cristiano. "You know, I've always watched you," he said quietly. "Even when we were in the middle of all those battles, I've always respected your work ethic, the way you never stopped pushing." Cristiano smiled, nodding slightly. "I've always watched you too," he said. "And I think that's what made us both better. We kept pushing each other." The conversation wasn't about the World Cup final. It wasn't about goals or records. It was about understanding. Understanding what it took to be where they were and realizing that, in the end, they were more alike than they had ever admitted. This was a moment of truth, a rare moment where the competition between them faded into the background. The conversation between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi had shifted. They no longer talked about the rivalry, the media, or the pressure of being at the top. Instead, the two men began to share their deeper thoughts, the things that weren't often seen in public. It was a rare moment, one where they could just be themselves, away from the crowds and expectations. "You know," Cristiano began, looking down his coffee cup, "there are times when I wonder if it's all worth it. All the sacrifices, the pressure to be perfect every time we step onto the field. It's a lot. Sometimes I just wish for a break, a moment where I can stop thinking about football, even if it's just for a while." Messi nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I get that," he said quietly. "For me, it's always been about the game. I've never known anything else. But the pressure, it's like it never ends. Every time you think you've reached the top, there's another challenge waiting for you, another match to play, another goal to score. It feels like the world is always watching, expecting more." Cristiano looked up, meeting Messi's eyes. Exactly, he said, his voice quiet but full of emotion. It's like no matter how much we achieve, no matter how many records we break, it's never enough. People always expect us to do more to be more. Sometimes it feels like we're not even allowed to have a bad day. Messi sighed, glancing out the window at the street outside. It's strange, isn't it? Everyone expects us to be perfect. But we're human, just like everyone else. We have good days, and we have bad days. Sometimes I wish people understood that. There was a long pause as they both sat quietly, the weight of their words hanging in the air. They had spent their whole careers in the spotlight, with the world constantly comparing them to each other, expecting them to be better than the last time. But in that moment, they were just two men talking about the reality of their lives, far away from the cameras and the endless expectations. You know, Cristiano said after a while, I think we've always pushed each other to be better, not just on the field, but off it too. We both have this drive to be the best, and I think that's what kept us going all these years. Messi smiled faintly. Yeah, he agreed. We may have been rivals on the pitch, but in some ways, we were helping each other. When you scored, I wanted to score too. When I did something good, you wanted to do it better. It was always like that. We made each other better without even realizing it. Cristiano leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. That's true. We may not have always liked each other's style, but deep down, we always respected each other. And that respect, I think that's what made us who we are today. Messi nodded. It's strange, though, the way people see us. They don't always understand what it's like to live in our shoes. The sacrifices, the hard work, the moments of doubt. But I guess that's the price we pay for being at the top. They both sat back, letting the silence settle for a moment. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was full of meaning. In this quiet cafe, with no one around to interrupt, Cristiano and Messi had found a connection that went beyond football. They had shared something personal, something that no one else could understand. As the conversation continued, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi began to talk about something deeper, something they rarely spoke about publicly, the subject that had defined so much of their careers, their rivalry. You know, people always said we didn't like each other. Cristiano began, his voice thoughtful. They said we couldn't be friends because we were always competing. But the truth is, I don't think I ever hated you. Not really. It's just that I always wanted to be better than you. And I think you felt the same way. Messi looked at him, surprised by his honesty. He hadn't expected Cristiano to say that, but in some ways it made sense. Yeah, Messi agreed slowly. I always watched you too. I never wanted to admit it, but when you scored, I felt the pressure to score more. When you won a trophy, I wanted to win the next one. It wasn't personal. It was just the drive to be better, to push each other. Cristiano nodded. Exactly. And the funny thing is, it made us both better. But we couldn't admit it back then. Everyone thought we were enemies. But the truth is, we were pushing each other, helping each other become better players. There was a brief pause as both men reflected on their words. Their rivalry had been intense, but in that moment, they both realized that it had always been about more than just the competition. It had been about respect. I think people misunderstood us, Messi said quietly. They wanted to see a fight between us. They wanted us to be bitter rivals, but it wasn't like that. We were both trying to be the best, and in a way that made us better players. Cristiano agreed. People never saw the bigger picture. They didn't understand how much we pushed each other, but that's what made this rivalry special. It wasn't about hate. It was about striving for greatness. I knew I had to be at my best because you were always at your best. Messi smiled, nodding. Yeah, and I knew the same about you. We kept raising the bar for each other. No matter what the media said or what people thought, we both knew the truth. We were making each other better, whether we liked it or not. The two men sat back in their chairs, reflecting on the years of competition and what it had truly meant. The public had often painted their rivalry as something bitter, a never-ending battle for supremacy. But in this moment, away from the cameras and the noise, Cristiano and Messi realized that their rivalry was something deeper. It had been a shared journey of growth. It's funny, Cristiano said, breaking the silence. We spent so many years competing against each other, but now, looking back, I think we should have enjoyed it more because we've done something no one else has done. We've pushed each other to the limits, and in the end, that's what made us great. Messi agreed, his eyes thoughtful. Yeah, we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And even though we're often seen as rivals, we've helped make each other the best versions of ourselves. They both smiled, a mutual understanding passing between them. In the end, it wasn't about the goals, the trophies, or the records. It was about the respect they had earned from each other. It was about how their rivalry had shaped their careers, making them the players they were today. The conversation between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi continued, but now it was shifting towards something even more unexpected, their future. Both of them had been living in the shadow of their extraordinary careers for so long, and yet they were beginning to understand that the world of football was starting to change. Their careers, too, were changing. The peak of their rivalry was behind them, and they both had to face the idea that they wouldn't be playing forever. I think we both know this time is coming, Messi said, his voice soft. He wasn't looking at Cristiano anymore, but instead staring out the window as if lost in thought. The game won't be the same without us, but we can't play forever. Cristiano looked at him, his expression serious. He had been thinking the same thing. No, we can't. We've given everything we had, but at some point, we have to let go. And that's harder than people think. Messi nodded slowly. I know. I've spent my whole life playing football. It's been my world. But now I start to wonder what comes next. What do we do when the game isn't the center of everything anymore? It was a question that both of them had probably been avoiding for years. They had always been so focused on the next match, the next goal, the next challenge. But now, sitting together in this quiet cafe, they realized that there was more to life than just football. They would both have to find new paths. It's hard to imagine not being on the pitch, Cristiano admitted. But maybe we'll still be part of the game in other ways. Coaching, helping the next generation. We've learned so much. Messi smiled a little at that idea. Maybe. But it's still strange to think about. We've been the faces of this sport for so long. When that's over, it's like you don't know who you are anymore. Everything changes. There was a long silence as both men sat back in their chairs, reflecting on their words. It wasn't easy to imagine life without football, but the reality was there. They were no longer the young stars they once were. Time was moving forward, and so were they. Do you ever wonder, Cristiano asked after a while, if we've missed out on other parts of life? All those years of focus, the training, the matches. We didn't really get to experience much outside of football. Messi thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I think about it sometimes. All the places we've been, all the things we've seen, but we couldn't have done anything differently. Football was always the priority. Cristiano looked at him, his eyes showing a mix of understanding and regret. True, we've sacrificed a lot, but now maybe it's time to find balance, to do things we've never had the chance to do before. The conversation shifted again, but this time it wasn't about football. It was about the rest of their lives, the things they had yet to discover. Cristiano and Messi were both standing at the edge of a new chapter, and although they didn't know exactly what it would look like, they were ready to embrace whatever came next. As they sat together in the cafe, sharing these thoughts, it became clear that this meeting, this rare moment of honesty and connection, was something neither of them would ever forget. As Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi continued to talk, the conversation took a turn toward their legacy, the lasting impact they had made on the world of football. It was a topic neither of them had addressed directly, but in the quiet cafe, away from the cameras and the expectations, it seemed like the right time. We've both done things in this sport that no one else will ever do, Cristiano said, his voice thoughtful. But what does it all mean in the end? We've won the trophies, scored the goals. But what do we leave behind? Messi took a deep breath, thinking about Cristiano's words. He had never really thought about it this way. All these years, it had always been about the next match, the next win. But now, sitting across from Cristiano, he realized that they were at the end of an era. Their rivalry, their journey, it was something that would be remembered long after they were gone. I guess, Messi began slowly, it's not just about what we've won. It's about how we made people feel. When we played, we made them believe. We gave them something to look forward to. Football became something more than a sport for them. It became an experience. Cristiano nodded, a small smile crossing his face. Yeah, I think that's what we've done. We've made people dream. They've watched us for years, and no matter what team they support, they've been part of something special. We've given them moments they'll never forget. The weight of those words settled between them. Cristiano and Messi hadn't just been athletes. They had been symbols. For millions of people, they represented excellence, hard work, and the pursuit of greatness. Their rivalry had been more than just a battle for titles. It had been a story of pushing each other to be better, to do more, to never settle. Do you think the next generation will have something like this? Messi asked quietly. Another rivalry that lasts this long, that brings out the best in both players. Cristiano thought for a moment. I don't know, he said finally. I think every generation has its stars, but what we've had is different. We've shared the stage for so long. Maybe no one will ever do it like we did. There was a pause, and the two of them sat in silence, reflecting on everything they had been through. All the battles on the field, all the highs and lows, the joy and the frustration. They had pushed each other to new heights, and in doing so, they had become more than just footballers. They had become part of a story that would be told for generations. It's strange, Messi said, looking down at his coffee. Sometimes I don't even realize how much we've done until moments like this. When it's just you and me talking like this, I think we've really done something special. Cristiano smiled, a look of genuine appreciation in his eyes. We've done something that people will talk about forever, and no matter what happens next, we can be proud of that. In that quiet cafe, with no one else around, Cristiano and Messi shared a moment of understanding. Their legacy was secure, but the journey they had taken together, one of respect, competition, and growth, was something that would stay with them long after their final match. As the conversation slowly came to an end, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi realized they had shared something incredibly rare, a quiet, honest moment away from the world. Both of them had spoken about things they had never dared to discuss publicly: the pressure, the sacrifice, the future, and what their careers truly meant. There was a sense of closure in the air, as if they had both come to terms with their paths, with the legacy they had built, and with what lay ahead. The world was still waiting for the World Cup final, the game that would determine who would walk away as the ultimate champion. But in this small, quiet cafe, that game didn't seem as important anymore. For Cristiano and Messi, their rivalry had always been about more than just one match, one trophy, one moment. It had been about the journey, the growth, and the respect they had built for each other over the years. I think this is it, Cristiano said, standing up from the table, his voice calm. We've said what we needed to say. It feels good to finally talk like this, to just be two people who understand what it's like. Messi nodded, a small smile on his face. Yeah, it feels right. No more pretending, no more pressure to be something we're not, just us. There was a brief pause as the two men stood there, almost unsure of what to do next. Neither of them had expected their conversation to go in this direction, but now that it had, it felt like a moment they both needed. Do you think people will understand this? Messi asked quietly. Our conversation, I mean. Will they see it the way we do? Cristiano paused, considering the question. Maybe not. Maybe they'll still see the rivalry, the competition. But at least we know the truth. And that's what matters. Messi agreed. Yeah, the truth. We were always pushing each other, not out of hate, but because we respected each other, because we wanted to be the best versions of ourselves. As the two men walked out of the cafe, they didn't need to say much more. They both understood that this moment, this rare meeting, was something they would carry with them forever. It wasn't just about the final match that awaited them. It was about the journey they had shared, the highs and lows, the challenges, and the triumphs. They had helped shape each other's careers in ways no one else could fully understand. They stepped into the busy streets, the world continuing around them. The final was still ahead, and soon they would be back to the familiar world of football. But for now, they walked side by side, not as rivals, but as two men who had spent a lifetime in the game. Their story was one that would echo in history, a story of greatness, rivalry, respect, and ultimately friendship. And as they parted ways, both Cristiano and Messi knew that this meeting had been the most important one of their careers, not because of what they had talked about, but because they had finally understood what they meant to each other. And with that understanding, they could walk away from their rivalry, knowing that they had shared something far greater than just a game.